Well, a very good morning to you. It's a pleasure to have you with us right here on Morning Express on this 10th day of August 2020. Officially, the countdown to the 2022 general election has begun. Less than a year to go. And according to the preparation, everything is definitely focused on the 2022 general election, not just from a stakeholder point of view, but also from the politicians. A lot of realignment still ongoing, and we'll definitely inform you about that and much more. As always, it's a pleasure to have you with us. We'd have started with the international news, but let's begin with the locals right now, just to get a feel of what's happening within our borders, even as we expect you to grab a copy of Kenya's bull newspaper, The Standard or The Daily Nation, to be adequately informed on the news making headlines. Speaking of headlines, let's take a look at the front page of The Standard, of which you'll see it shortly on your screen right now. On the front page, it's all to do with the most expensive poll, and The Standard goes with this. Here comes Kenya's most expensive poll. 364 days to go. As the one-year countdown to the polls began yesterday, IEBC unveiled campaign finance limits for candidates, giving a glimpse of the power money will have on the choices, with at least 50 billion shillings allowed for campaigns. More details on page 4, 5, 6 and 7 of The Standard, but they paint a picture of the influence money will have on the choices. August 9th being the date for Kenya's general election, IEBC requires 41 billion Kenya shillings to conduct the elections. They definitely have a cash crunch, according to Wafula Chebukati. We'll get to talk more about that, even as 4.4 billion is the maximum amount a presidential candidate can spend in the campaigns. 17.7 billion being the maximum campaign spending for a political party. They've definitely drawn the lines, with 123 million being the amount that can be spent in the most expensive county, that is Turkana County, bearing in mind its geographical size and the population as well. So much more intrigues around the state of preparedness, with 364 days to go. So much focus on the electoral body IEBC, and perhaps that's why they gave sort of a breakdown of the preparations so far. Let's take a look at the front page of the Daily Nation. How Ruto man was kicked out at night. Of course, so much focus over the last couple of days on the Turkish national, who has been the center of focus following that botched trip to Uganda by the Deputy President, Dr. William Ruto. Of course, the Turkish national being an interest to the investigative agencies. Those who say he is an investor, but his companies remain a mystery rather. And according to the Daily Nation, they mention he was spirited out of the country at 5 a.m. in unclear circumstances, to the chagrin of Deputy President William Ruto. And of course, the law has come into sharp focus right here, where the minister may order removal from Kenya of any person declared a prohibited immigrant. And we'll get to highlight some of the intrigues around that particular deportation, even as Kalonzo Musyoka, according to the front page of the Daily Nation, has set his sights on presidency. Just yesterday, he launched the Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka Command Center in Karen, Nairobi, perhaps also outlaying his blueprint for the country going forward as the polls or clamor around the polls get heated. Of course, much more stories in today's dailies. The Standard also goes big with that Aideen exiting Kenya under mysterious circumstances. More details on page 9. Tea prices go up at the auction, even as they take a look at the resumption of full capacity of public service vehicles. Some call it too soon. Others are lauding this particular move, bearing in mind other transport facilities like the SGR were functioning at full capacity. So that's, in retrospect, what you can expect with today's dailies, and we'll definitely get to highlight some of these particular stories that are making headlines. allow me to sort of introduce our guest already before we take a look at this particular story on the timelines by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. Of course, right here in studio, I'm joined by James GAKUYA, Member of Parliament, Embakasi North. It's great to have you, and good morning, sir.
Good morning to you, Rogers.
Okay, by way of Zoom from Mombasa, I'm joined by Senator Rose Nyamunga. It's great to have you, madam. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Okay, we'll get to deliberate on some of this news-making headlines. So let's begin with the latest right now on the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, who are well prepared to conduct the 2022 general election. Or are they? That's the big question right now. Well, yesterday, it is exactly roughly 1 year to the general election, and our senior political affairs reporter, Jeff Kirui, explores the preparedness and the key timelines facing the IEBC for it to conduct free and fair elections.
The clock is ticking towards the August 9th, 2022 general election. Against the backdrop of a heated debate on Uhuru's succession race, the Electoral Commission has rolled out its countdown to the election day.
Public officers who wish to contest in the upcoming general election must resign 6 months to the general election. That remains the law, and that must be complied with. So that should remove any doubt to those who think there's a judgment of the court that will allow them to work until the last day. Let them leave, resign and go, and let other Kenyans take those positions.
The Commission is also keen to implement the contentious and elusive two-thirds gender rule. According to Chebukati, the provision has been attained in the county assemblies by way of gender top-up through party lists. IEBC will enforce the April 2017 High Court ruling to actualize the gender rule in Parliament.
The Commission was directed to reject any nomination list of our political party for its candidates for the 290 constituencies and 47 county-based elections for position of Senate that do not comply with the two-thirds gender principle.
Chebukati says the Commission is starved of funds to fully implement the election operations plan. The Commission requires 40.9 billion shillings, but National Treasury has so far allocated them 26.3 billion shillings.
For purposes of the 2022 general election, the Commission prepared a budget and requires 40.329 billion to carry out all activities in the election operation plan. And we require a further 588 million for purpose of procuring items to be used in the COVID-19 protocols, which include the thermometer guns, sanitizers, soap, and washing points, which brings the total election budget to 40.917 billion.
Even as the countdown to the 2022 elections begins, public servants who intend to participate in the 2022 general elections have until February 9th, 2022 to resign. The Electoral Commission has also said it will strictly enforce the Electoral Code of Conduct and take action against parties involved in electoral malpractices and violence. Patrick Amimo, KTN News, Mombasa.
Okay, so it's all to do with the elections countdown. IEBC definitely giving their spending limits in terms of the proposals, which will definitely be stamped by Parliament. And just taking a look at page 4 of the Standard, Electoral Agency to fine aspirants for violating cap on poll spending. And they've definitely given the regulations right there, which are meant to curb runaway election spending. They were released just yesterday, and they have opened the way for presidential candidates to outgun each other with a mere slap on the wrist for violating the caps. GAKUYA, let's start with your quick reaction right here. It seems money is definitely an important cog in campaigns, especially in this country. Talking about 40 billion Kenya shillings, and this ongoing conversation of Kenya perhaps having the most expensive elections, especially in this region. What say you about this? Because approximately it might cost 2,000 Kenya shillings each in terms of voters to make sure that they get their all-important rights.
Thank you, Rogers. Allow me to salute viewers wherever they are watching us from. Coming to your point, let me state very clearly that we must expect to have such a magnitude bloated expenditure of this year, this calendar of election. And one reason is that we are moving to an election with an extraordinary conditions as a country, where we are experiencing conditionalities of what we call COVID-19 protocols. And most of these conditionalities has to come in with extraordinary costs that actually we are not experienced there before. One is that we must add to those conditionalities, because failure to that, we may not be within the conditionalities, where sanitizing, washing of hands, and other conditionalities must be met, and all these must require extra funding. In that particular case, it tells you that it may require even to add extra cracks for these particular measures for the conditionalities of what we call crashing or social distance. And therefore, there has to be an expectation that this current or this next year's general election will push this country a bit higher in terms of costing of or budgeting of the same. I am optimistic that the Electoral Commission, the CRAMA, after being budgeted 26 billion, probably it may not be fully comfortable for them to do the whole stretch of the process, and therefore their CRAMA to look for 14 billion maybe require some consideration. And areas to do with other conditionalities that they have put in their terms, I believe that in fact these are normal conditionalities, because there has to be what we call regulations in terms of funding and financing campaigns. And having this schedule, it is to prepare those contenders so that at least as they prepare to get into the field, they are very aware that what is expected for them. You know, also in terms of campaign, there are those people who marshals the campaign with billions of money, but with this kind of conditionality, I'm sure that it's not those bags of money may not influence the election because of these kind of regulations. Okay. So I personally, I agree with the Electoral Commission that these regulations are obvious and they need to be added to.
Okay. Senator Rose, even as you add your voice to this, others might argue that these laws apply very well on paper. At the end of the day, little might be done in terms of following these particular regulations when it comes to the actual campaigns itself. Well, what's your reaction to that?
Thank you very much, and good morning to all listeners. I want to thank you for giving us this opportunity to discuss this issue. It was a hot issue from yesterday. I think that by AIBC giving a breakdown on the budget, that is critical, because for us to move forward, the government must be very prepared to know what the cost of the elections of next year will be. It's already mentioned that my colleague is agreeing with that and even the figures, but from where I sit and looking at what happened in 2017, there was a lot of money that was put on the elections and a lot of money was given to the IEBC. I believe that we need good resources for us to have credible elections, and it is also important that we factor the COVID virus pandemic into consideration. But from where I sit and going by the 2017 elections, there was a lot of wastage. We saw a lot of materials which were ordered and never came on time. Most of the materials were being delivered way after the elections were completed. So much as we may give the figures, and we would urge the government to provide the resources that is required, from where we sit, we also know that the elections and also from the members who are going to campaign, normally there is much, much more that money that is being spent on elections. Some of it may not even be necessary because I believe election is about the heart. By now, most Kenyans have decided where they will put their vote. Maybe a small percentage of 30, maybe 30% may change, but as it is, most people have decided. So I don't think we need a lot of money to convince our voters, but we only need enough resources to prepare for the process, that the process is credible. And then credibility also of the process is not about money. It's about the preparedness and it's about the goodwill of the IEBC, because Kenyans always wake up to go and vote. They have decided who they want to, but they take too long to make the results known to the people. So it brings a lot of anxiety. So I want to plead with IEBC that yes, you will be given resources. I am not sure that 40 billion is what you require. I believe it should be much less if you compare our election costs compared to other countries, even the developed world. And also, I'm wondering why we cannot be moving forward in terms of making our elections even digital, because it is possible that we make our elections digital. That way, we will save a lot of money on the preparedness, and we will also have credible, because people will believe in what is digital. And I mean, unless it is not tight, I mean, it's not end-to-end tight.
Neta, let me cross over to GAKUYA right here. I'm looking at this particular article on page 4, and they wrote this: it is unlikely that one can seriously compete for elections without a significant financial war chest, perhaps highlighting the importance funds might hold in terms of campaigns. And this consideration at times may put off many potential leaders, leaving politics to a few. Also, it sheds light on the actual motivation of political candidates, salaries and allowances being at least one of them. So what's your take on the significance of money when it comes to campaigns? Does it lock out? Do you agree with this? And perhaps at the end of the day, is this the motivation, is this the driving force behind the politicians we see? Because some have come under criticism, especially from the nationalism point of view, or lack of it.
Rogers, in terms of politics, campaigns, there is no way you can exempt the money usage. Because you require branding, branding means money. You require materials, materials means money. And you require many, many other things to public. Even when you cannot be walking when you are maneuvering your campaigns, you must require to walk and, with at least a vehicle. You need a vehicle even to carry your supporters and all this. And taking all this into consideration, it tells you, finally, you must require some funding. This does not mean that you must individually having your own money, but at least you must look for your friends here and there, mobilize money from them. And that's why this window is given by the Electoral Commission, that at least every single contender required to open an account, and that account will be monitored so that at least the required amount cannot exceed, so that you can be able to lobby for those finances. It happens very well in outside country like United States. You remember very well during Obama's first campaign, otherwise he mobilized money from well-wishers and public, and actually he got a lot of money. But here in Kenya, that particular aspect is not very common, and you realize that in fact, even though you call for these halambis to campaign halambis, you may not resort to get good enough. But at least it is the only route to assist those who does not have, because at least we have very strong material people who are left completely because of lack of money. And I can tell you that limitation is very awkward. But you have no choice, because at least at the end of the day, you require something. And therefore, when you decide that you put yourself in this particular field, you must be prepared yes, first prepare your friends so that they are ready, that you are in the field, and then they get ready to finance you.
Okay, but the question being, is this the motivating factor? At the end of the day, why is there so much clamor to become a member of parliament, to become a representative? Is it the money factor from where you sit, GAKUYA?
I can tell you, in terms of leadership, personally, I may look at it on a different way, because you realize that, in fact, some of these fields, they are in the blood. You feel that actually, if your blood is a medical doctor, you feel that that's the career you belong to. And at least you does it very well when you change yourself on that route. Even in the politics, you realize that, in fact, there are some people who at least their blood is a bit with this particular field. And they find themselves in that particular route. Not everybody can become a politician. This is for sure. But at least you feel that every single individual has his ambition, and there are those who feel that in that political line is where they belong. I can tell you, this particular political field is not money-building sector, and I can tell you for sure. And you realize, Rogers, that most of the members of parliament comes in the parliament very rich, but adds in the parliament very poor. That's the truth of the matter. And let me tell you, if you become a member of parliament with just the notion that, in fact, your only source of income is that salary, then you are doomed. Okay. And you are going to get a very good shock. Okay, in politics, you must be either way have two hats. That actually you have what you call a side hustle, because if you are reliant on this, I can tell you, you can't reach far. Okay. Because the dependence is too big, and the expectation out there is too big. And let me tell you, you represent millions of people who does require your support. Let me tell you, if you don't have what you call side hustle, it will be very hard for you to nurture them out of that particular salary, and still you get something to prepare yourself and your family.
Okay, Senator Nyamunga, add your voice to this. In terms of the nationalism from our leaders, does this money factor affect the quality of leadership? Because even if you might not break even in terms of the amount of money used in campaigns and the salaries and allowances thereafter, there are hidden opportunities when it comes to power. Talk to me about this.
Yeah, I want to support what my colleague has already mentioned, but from where I sit, I think, yes, to some extent, money is playing a role in the type of leadership that we elect. For example, if you can look at, for example, now our presidential candidates, and for example, the way our deputy president is going around and the amount of money that he is spending, I don't think that the money is spending, not even in churches, is really done with a positive attitude that is just good and is giving to the churches. But I believe the major underlying factor is that there is an intention to sway the voter towards a particular person because of the resources that they have. And unfortunately, Kenyans believe if I went home and I had like about 10 big fuel gaslers and I'm all over with money, people tend to lean towards such a person. Not that they stand for, not that they believe what that person stands for, but to some extent, yes, money is playing a major role, but in my view, I don't think, but that is a small percentage. I already say that Kenyans, I think by now, have made up their minds on who they want to elect in different positions. But there is also some percentage that have decided. I mean, there's a percent that has decided this is the person that we are going to vote. But there are people who are still waiting on the fence, and they want to see who is going to butter their bread more, or which side of the bread will be buttered more. And the last minute people who come with a lot of money will sway and will get a percentage of that vote. But that is not the way we should go. We should look for quality leadership. And I want to urge most Kenyans and all of us that We have been with our leaders, we know them. I know there are some who will come at the last minute, but we should not judge our people on the last minute money. Like, for example, the money that they will be spending between now and the election date. We should be very careful, because Kenya has to be built on a very, very strong foundation. And what I believe in right now is that we know the foundation that we should be building Kenya on, and that is the foundation of empowering our people to be independent. We want to empower our youth, the women, everybody, so that at least we lead some quality life. But if we are going to wait for politicians to come with empty, some of them very empty promises, telling you how they will turn your world down, and we know after every election, from the resources that people spend on campaigns, by the time you are through with the campaign, you are poor and you are a pauper. And after serving in parliament now, this is my second term, whatever you get from parliament cannot return whatever amount of money that people spend, unless we want to misuse the resources that are under our custody. For example, misusing of CDF or any other money, or if any other money that we may come, that may be under our guide after the elections. If it is just the resources that you get, the salary, the allowances, you cannot compare that with a lot of demand that we get from our electorate. Our electorate is really, really suffering, very poor in some areas, but we cannot meet their demands. We only need leaders who can think outside the box and give our people way forward. That apart from the little money that I can help, I can support, say, bursary here, school fees, but I cannot pay for everybody's school fees. I cannot meet the social demands. That one cannot happen from the salaries, and anybody who is promising any Kenyan that is lying. And even from government resources, we cannot be relying to maybe take from government resources whatever is under our custody, or the resources that we should make sure that we use money that is under our custody in a very prudent way, so to help the development of Kenya, but not from the allowances, not from the salaries, not from the empty promises that we give to our people, but from proper organization with the policies that we have. And we should make sure that after elections, Kenya has to move, people must continue with their lives. But it is not good that we come with money, which we have gotten from different sources, to hoodwink our people, to make them maybe elect some leaders that should not have been elected. It should not be based on the money that is given, but it should be based on the ability of different, because we have so many people who don't have resources, but they are very good leaders and they can change lives of people. So I would like to urge most of the electorate that we should not be led by the last minute resources, but we should actually get to know who we are leading, who we are electing for any positions from the presidential to the MCS.
Well, issue-based politics, and perhaps the conversation that's ongoing right now is Kenya rife for issue-based politics, apart from the regional and tribal-based politics we've seen in recent past. But more details on the campaign spending, at least some of the proposals according to that schedule provided in the notice. Let's take a look at the spending in the counties right now, because apart from the presidency, which has been capped at 4.4 billion in terms of campaign spending, the governorship, senator and woman representative, you will need at least 21 to 123 million on the maximum side to gun for their seats. That's according to the IEBC, who have published the latest details in terms of spending in the counties. If we could actually just take a look at this, where the published contributions have been outlined, as well as spending limits for candidates who will be vying in next year's general election. A presidential candidate, as I mentioned, will be allowed to spend a maximum of 4.4 billion, while gubernatorial, senatorial and county woman representatives will spend varied amounts depending on the region. Those vying in Turkana County will spend the highest amount of 123 million, while candidates in Lamu will spend the lowest amount, being 21 million. Duncan Haemba paints a picture of how the IEBC notice may be a big relief to some candidates. The proposals, however, will most likely face resistance, given that the same must receive parliamentary nod before its adoption.
As the country enters the home stretch for the 2022 general election, the poll agency has fired in the air its first warning by publishing the contributions and spending limits, including the total amount that a candidate or a political party may receive and spend during the campaign period. To those eyeing a presidential seat, the cost of hunting for power will not exceed 4.4 billion shillings. Gubernatorial, senatorial, and county woman members of the National Assembly across the country have been given varying spending rate cards. For instance, the expansive Turkana County, whose population is 926,796, spending limit has been capped at 123 million. In the capital county of Nairobi, whose population is 4.3 million, spending limit is 117 million. Then the vast Marsabit with 459,000 people, candidates will spend up to 114 million, Wajir 103 million. Counties with the lowest rate card are Lamu at 12 million, Tharaka Nithi 23, Vihiga and Nyamira at 25 million. For members of the National Assembly, candidates for North Horr will spend the highest at 94 million, followed by Wajir South at 64, Turkana North 54 million, Turkana West 48, while Turkana East has been given a limit of 45 million. Budalangi, Bomachoge Chache, Emuhaya, Luanda, Vihiga, Kangema and Mathioya will have the lowest limit of 11 million, while those in India and Kirinyaga Central will cough a maximum of 12 million. The notice and proposed spending limits are, however, subject to approval by Parliament's Committee on Delegated Legislation. According to IEBC 2022 general election timelines, aspirants are expected to fundraise only on December 9, 2021, 8 months before a general election. Duncan Haemba, KTN News.
Okay, so the schedules, at least according to that notice, have painted a picture of what you can expect as we get closer to the 2022 general election. Allow me to introduce our third panelist joining us from the City Center studios, Alex Manyasi, who's a governance expert. It's great to have you with us. Perhaps your quick reaction to the regulations that are meant to curb runaway election spending by the IEBC. But also, as you do that, voter education is also quite important. Are we prepared as Kenyans for next year's general election from where you sit?
It looks like we might be prepared. Some of us were a bit worried because of the delay in bringing on board the other commissioners after some 3 commissioners left the IEBC. And so therefore, there's lights at the end of the tunnel, as we can see. It looks like it's possible to have the commissioners in office by August, because at least a year to the election, and then we should be having the entire commission fully constituted and therefore ready to run the election. But having said that, I guess there are many aspects that are still this commission is going to depend on Chebukati a lot and his 2 colleagues. I say that because these are the guys who were in the last election, participated, planned and executed. And so the many failures and the many successes that then came with that election is such that there needs to be further especially the newcomers, they need to be inducted quite fast, quickly, so that they can take up the responsibility to run the next election come August next year. If I can just comment a bit on the financing, it's important for the Commission to be adequately financed. Resourcing is one of the factors that either makes it possible or fail an election. However, if you look at the entire figures being floated in terms of the maximums for expenditure, this country is going to be spend a lot of money, especially to the run-up to the election, and therefore thinking just about maybe going into the specifics, if you look at what a governor is supposed to spend or a woman rep or a senator for that matter, then the question that one asks is, where do you get such money from? That's number one. Number two, how do you recover such money? And number three, then what is the motivation of entering into politics if you're going to spend such huge sums of money? And if we take a moment and internalize that, then as a country, we need to be a bit worried about if people are spending such large sums of money, then where are they supposed to recover it from? Or is it looked at as an investment that must be recouped? So woe unto you if you're then elected as a woman rep, or woe unto you if you're elected as a senator with no executive power. And so you, all the expenses that are supposed to be run by yourself after elections are continuing to be run by yourself. And so what really is the motivation in those offices that are not executive? So those are the things that we need to be interrogating.
Correct.
But on the other hand, we also need to realize that part of the reason why some of these monies are being capped and put maximums for what you can spend was also meant to reduce corruption, ultimately, monitor finances being used. You know that when you know the source of money and the maximum that someone is going to spend, then it's also possible to make sure that there is no illegal money being spent, and then the process of election is not being skewed by those people who might receive terror-related money and skew the election, and have people who are not meant to be winning the election actually winning the election. But I still think those amounts are a bit high.
Okay, well, it's definitely all to do with evening the playing field. More details on page 4, 5, 6, and 7 of the Standard on those regulations that are meant to curb runaway election spending. But Senator Rose, let's talk about the issue of representation, especially when it comes to the male-dominated political field this time round. Perhaps does money lock out many female aspirants from where you sit? Because other critics might argue that ladies might be more interested in nomination slots as compared to battling it out for these elective positions. Well, what's your take on that?
Yeah, thank you. I think that there is a time the president of the United States came to Kenya, that is the former president Barack Obama, and he said that if you have a football match or any match and you're only playing with half the team, it means that that is a flawed type of games. If you look at our family setups, there is no man who will be respected in this country if he doesn't have a family and doesn't have a wife. But when it comes to issues of leadership, women are always left behind. And in my view, we are not left behind because we are not capable. I think women are very, very capable. And we have seen it from the leaders, the female leaders that we have, not only in Kenya, but all over the world. Women have shown themselves. Look at them, the World Bank, the IMF. You know, they've been led by women for years, and then the presidency is central in the financial sector. Anywhere that you, even if it is a women charmer, wherever, the treasurer will always be a woman, even in our villages. It means that their role is very critical. But I want to fault two areas where women have been left, I feel women have been left behind. First of all, yes, the issue of resources, and then a deliberate attempt by our party leaderships. It is important that our leaders realize the importance and the role that women play for them to have a deliberate effort, put a deliberate effort to have women on board. If you look at the party listings, anyway, at least this time, IBC said yesterday that anybody without a two-thirds gender who has not met that the two-thirds gender rule, that list will not be accepted, it will be rejected. And I think that's a very, very positive move towards helping or supporting women to join leadership positions and more so elective. Women, I know we have issues with resources because we have very good leaders, I already mentioned that, be it female or male. But let me talk about the women leadership. And let me talk about family, let me talk about our villages, let me talk about our churches. Everywhere you go, the input of women is very critical. In my own family, when I grew up, my father left a lot of responsibility to my mother. And when we asked him why he did that, he told us the reason he did that was to empower my mother, so that we would listen to her, knowing that authority comes from my mother. So that applies across board, that where women are left behind, because look at now the amount of resources that is required for any campaign. Most of us cannot afford that. Even if you are serving as I am serving today, and I want to contest for any position at the county level or at the sub-county level, those amounts most of us don't have. And let nobody think that if you are serving as an MP, you have resources. In fact, MPs are the poorest from where I sit. I used to have more money, but immediately I joined politics, that money disappeared. Why? Because everybody needs a share of it. And if you have the heart of supporting people, there is no way you will keep money in your pocket and deny a child who is supposed to go to school, or a pregnant woman who is supposed to deliver, or a child who is orphaned. So that is what makes our leaders very poor, and I am one of them. Because leadership is a calling. If you go there to make money, you will be so disappointed. But if you go there to change or to help or to support in any small way the good of our people, then that way you cannot be a rich person, or you cannot have enough resources. So resources is very critical, and the party leaders must just go out of their way. And let us follow the example of Rwanda. Rwanda, not that there are no men to contest, but there is a deliberate attempt from the top leadership to support the women. So as even without BBI, with BBI, we need to bring women on board at the ward level, at the national, right. The sub-counties, and we need to see women governors, more women elected senators. We don't want to sit in the Senate because we are nominated, but we want to sit there with the mandate of the people. I want to feel that, yes, I am at the Senate courtesy the people of Kisumu. So that one gives me a lot of authority, and I can go out of my way. But if you are nominated, most of the time you are like a squatter. You squat somewhere. And even you cannot even vote in parliament. So we want full leadership. If I'm a leader, I should be full leadership, and I should not be gagged by anything. Maybe because I didn't have money, or maybe my party did not make a deliberate attempt to make sure that women are given an opportunity. Okay. So yes, money is critical, but party leadership is also very critical.
Quite so. And I think that's why Wafula Chebukati on cue perhaps highlighted Constitution Article 81B, all to do with two-thirds gender principle, mentioning that it will not accept political parties' lists for nomination that does not adhere to that two-thirds gender rule. So that might be a deliberate level. Let's see what actually plays out right after this. Allow us to take a short break. We're still joined with Senator Rose Nyamunga, GAKUYA right here in studio, and Alex Manyasi from our City Center studios. When we come back, we continue highlighting the latest in terms of press review what you should expect in today's dailies. And of course, that particular story, all to do with the elections countdown, is playing key focus. That and much more after the break. Stay with Morning Express.